bullies mocked the disabled bride in a wheelchair, unaware the silent cowboy was behind them. The small-town church stood quietly at the end of a narrow road, surrounded by old trees and simple houses. The building was not big or fancy, but it held many memories for the people who lived there. On this special morning, soft sunlight touched the white walls, making the place look peaceful and warm. Inside, simple flowers were placed along the aisle, and a gentle feeling of hope filled the air. It was a wedding day, and even though it was not a grand event, it was very important for the people involved. The bride arrived earlier than most guests. A close friend gently pushed her wheelchair up the small ramp that had been added to the church entrance. The ramp was new, built by kind neighbors who wanted to make sure she could enter with ease. The bride wore a simple white dress that flowed softly over her legs. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, and her face showed a quiet strength. Her eyes held both excitement and nervousness, but there was also a deep peace in her expression. She had waited a long time for this day, and nothing would take away the meaning it held for her. Many people in the town knew her story. A few years earlier, she had been in a serious accident that changed her life forever. Before that day, she had been active, always helping others and moving from place to place with energy. After the accident, she had to learn how to live in a new way. The wheelchair became part of her daily life. At first, it had been very hard. She had felt fear, sadness, and even anger. But over time, she found strength she never knew she had. She learned to smile again, to hope again, and to believe that her life still had great value. As she entered the church, a few early guests turned their heads. Some smiled kindly. Others looked at her with soft eyes filled with pity. A few whispered quietly to the people beside them. Not all of those whispers were kind. Some people wondered how a woman in a wheelchair could manage marriage. Others questioned why anyone would choose such a difficult path. The bride could feel those looks and sense the quiet talk, even if she did not hear every word. Still, she kept her head high. She had learned long ago that other people's opinions did not define her worth. Her mother stood nearby, holding back tears. She remembered the long nights in the hospital, the slow recovery, and the moments when doctors were unsure about the future. Seeing her daughter dressed as a bride felt like a miracle. It was a reminder that life could still be beautiful, even after deep pain. The mother gently fixed a small part of the dress and kissed her daughter's cheek. The bride smiled back, grateful for the love that had carried her through the hardest times. The church slowly began to fill. Friends, family members, and neighbors took their seats. Some came with happy hearts, truly wishing the bride a wonderful future. Others came out of curiosity. They wanted to see how this unusual wedding would unfold. A few carried quiet judgments in their minds, even if they did not say them out loud. In small towns, people often talked, and stories traveled fast. The bride had learned to live with that. She knew that not everyone would understand her life or her choices. One of the bridesmaids leaned down and whispered kind words to the bride, telling her how beautiful she looked. The bride thanked her, feeling a little more relaxed. The soft music playing in the background helped calm her nerves. Every small detail, from the flowers to the gentle light coming through the windows, made the moment feel real. It was happening. After everything she had been through, she was here, about to start a new chapter of her life. Yet there was a strange feeling in the air. The groom had not yet arrived, and some people noticed. A few guests exchanged looks. Quiet questions passed from one row to another. Why was he late? Was something wrong? The bride did not show worry on her face, but inside, her heart beat a little faster. She trusted him, but the weight made her think about all the challenges they had faced together. Their relationship had not been easy. They had faced doubts from others and hard moments of their own. Still, they had chosen to move forward together, believing that love was stronger than fear. In the back of the church, a group of people stood close together, talking in low voices. Their faces showed small smiles that were not kind. They looked at the bride, then at each other, as if sharing private jokes. The bride noticed them but chose to look away. She had promised herself that she would not let negativity ruin her day. This wedding was about love, not about proving anything to anyone else. The pastor checked his watch and then looked toward the door. The soft music continued. The guests waited. The bride took a slow, deep breath. She thought about all the moments that had led her here. The long therapy sessions, the days when she felt tired and weak, and the times when she wanted to give up. She remembered the people who had supported her, encouraged her, and believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself. She also thought about the man she was about to marry. He had met her after the accident. He had not known her before, so he had never compared her to who she used to be. He saw her as she was now, strong, kind, and full of quiet courage. He never treated her like she was broken. Instead, he treated her like someone who had survived something hard and come out stronger. That made her love him even more. As more guests arrived, the church became fuller, but the feeling of mixed emotions remained. Some people smiled with true happiness. Others watched with silent judgment. The bride sat calmly at the front, hands still, heart steady on the outside, even if it felt busy on the inside. She reminded herself that this day was not about pleasing everyone. It was about starting a life with someone who loved her for who she truly was. The sunlight grew a little brighter through the windows, lighting up her face. For a moment, everything felt quiet and still, like the world was holding its breath. The bride closed her eyes for a second and whispered a small prayer in her heart. She prayed for peace, for strength, and for a beautiful beginning. No matter what others thought, she knew her journey had meaning. This was not the end of her story. It was the start of something new. And as she waited there in her wheelchair, dressed in white, surrounded by mixed looks and quiet whispers, she showed a kind of bravery that many people never had to learn. She was not just a bride. She was a survivor, a dreamer, and a woman who refused to let her past define her future. The church, the town, and the people inside had no idea that this quiet beginning was only the first step in a much bigger story that would soon unfold. Outside the church, the air felt different from the peaceful feeling inside. The sun was still shining, but near the front steps, a small group of people stood together with careless attitudes. They leaned against a low fence and talked among themselves, glancing toward the church doors from time to time. Their voices were low at first, but their faces showed that they were not there with kind thoughts. They laughed quietly, sharing looks that carried meaning only they understood. One of them pointed toward the entrance when the bride had first arrived. He shook his head and said something that made the others smile. Another person added a comment, and soon they were all chuckling. At first, it seemed like harmless talk to anyone passing by, but their words slowly turned sharper. The laughter became more bold. They began to feel comfortable saying things they should have kept to themselves. They spoke about the wheelchair, making jokes that were not meant to be kind. They questioned how a wedding like this could even happen. They acted as if they were smarter or better, simply because their own lives had not faced the same kind of hardship. None of them thought about the pain their words could cause. They did not think about how hard the bride had worked to rebuild her life. To them, it was just something to laugh about. A few guests walking into the church passed by them and felt uncomfortable. One woman slowed her steps when she heard part of the conversation. She looked at the group with disapproval but said nothing. A man nearby frowned, clearly not liking what he heard, but he kept walking. It was easier for most people to stay quiet than to speak up. The bullies noticed this silence and took it as permission to continue. When no one stopped them, they felt stronger. Their voices grew a little louder. One of them made a comment that caused the others to laugh more openly. Another slapped his knee, enjoying the attention from his friends. They felt important in their small circle, even though what they were doing was wrong. They did not realize that their laughter carried further than they thought. The sound drifted closer to the church doors, mixing with the quiet music inside. Inside the church, the bride could not hear every word, but she could sense that something was happening. She noticed a few guests looking uneasy. She saw a woman glance toward the door and then quickly look away. The bride felt a small tightness in her chest. She had experienced this feeling before, the feeling that people were talking about her in a way that was not kind. It was not new to her. Since her accident, she had learned to recognize that energy even without hearing the words. She took a slow breath and reminded herself to stay calm. This was her wedding day. She would not let other people's cruelty take control of her emotions. Still, it was not easy. Even strong people feel pain when they know they are being judged. She looked down at her hands for a moment and then lifted her chin again. She had promised herself that she would face the world with dignity, no matter what. Outside, the group continued. One of them said something about how difficult life must be for someone in her condition. He said it in a way that made it sound like a joke, but there was no kindness in his tone. Another added a comment about how the groom must feel. They laughed again, not caring who might hear them. They acted as if the bride was not a real person with real feelings, but just a topic for their entertainment. A young boy walking with his parents heard part of the conversation and looked confused. He asked his mother why those people were laughing. The mother quickly guided him away, telling him to keep walking. She did not want her child to hear such talk. Even though she did not confront the group, her face showed disappointment. The bullies noticed her look, but did not care. In their minds, they were just having fun. The sad truth was that none of them understood what true strength looked like. They believed strength meant never being hurt, never struggling, and never needing help. They did not see that real strength was sitting inside that church in a white dress, showing up to start a new life despite everything that had happened. They could not see past the wheelchair. They saw only what was on the surface. Inside, a bridesmaid leaned toward the bride and whispered that everything would be okay. She had noticed some of the uncomfortable looks and wanted to offer support. The bride smiled softly and thanked her. That small act of kindness helped more than the bridesmaid realized. It reminded the bride that for every unkind person, there were also people who truly cared. The pastor stepped closer to the front, preparing for the ceremony. He looked calm, but even he sensed that not everyone outside and inside shared the same respectful spirit. The music continued, but the waiting felt longer now. Each minute seemed to stretch. The bride wondered if the groom had seen or heard anything outside. She trusted him, but she also knew how cruel people could be. She hoped he would not be affected by it. Outside, one of the bullies glanced across the street and noticed a truck parked there. A tall figure stood near it, leaning quietly, almost blending into the background. The man wore a hat pulled low, and his posture was relaxed but strong. The bully looked at him for a moment, but then turned back to his friends. He did not think much of it. The man looked quiet, maybe even shy. There was no reason in their minds to worry about him. So they kept talking. They kept laughing, They kept saying things they would never say if they truly understood who might be listening. Their confidence grew because they believed they were safe. They believed no one would challenge them. They believed their words would disappear into the air without any consequence. But words have a way of traveling. Even when people think they are being quiet, hurtful energy spreads. It changes the mood of a place. It makes people uncomfortable. It creates a shadow, even on a bright day. The bride, sitting inside, could feel that shadow, even if she could not fully explain it. She closed her eyes for a brief moment and focused on her breathing. She reminded herself of why she was there. She was not there for the bullies. She was there for love. She was there for a future built on respect and partnership. No amount of careless laughter could take that away, even if it hurt in small, quiet ways. Outside, the group had no idea that their actions were being noticed. They did not realize that someone had been watching them from the moment they started. They did not know that their jokes and cruel comments were being quietly counted, not with anger, but with a calm seriousness. They thought they were invisible. They thought they were untouchable. What they did not understand was that silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes silence means patience. Sometimes it means someone is choosing the right moment to step forward. And while they continued to laugh, unaware and careless, the day was slowly moving toward a moment that would change the tone of everything. Across the street from the church, a man stood quietly beside an old pickup truck. The truck was clean but simple, just like the man himself. He leaned lightly against the door, one boot resting on the ground and the other relaxed, as if he had been standing there for a while. A wide-brimmed cowboy hat shaded his face, making it hard for others to read his expression. Most people who passed by barely noticed him. He did not speak much, and he did not try to draw attention to himself. But behind that quiet presence was a sharp awareness of everything happening around him. His eyes moved slowly from the church doors to the group near the fence. He had heard the laughter. He had caught pieces of the comments. At first, he hoped it would stop on its own. Sometimes people say foolish things and then think better of it. But as the minutes passed, the laughter did not fade. It grew. The words became more careless. The man's jaw tightened slightly, though his body remained calm. He was not a man who enjoyed conflict, but he was also not a man who ignored cruelty. People in town knew him as someone who spoke little, but meant a lot. When he did speak, others listened. He had built a reputation over the years as someone fair, steady, and dependable. He did not look for trouble, but he never walked away from what was right. Those who truly knew him understood that his silence was not weakness. It was strength held under control. He glanced toward the church windows, thinking of the woman inside. He remembered the first time he had met her. It had not been in a happy place. It had been during a hard time when she was still learning how to adjust to her new life. He had seen the frustration in her eyes back then. He had also seen her determination. Even when things were difficult, she had refused to give up on herself. That strength had stayed with him. Over time, respect had grown into something deeper. As he watched the group near the fence, his thoughts went back to all the moments she had shared with him. The days when she felt tired, but still smiled. The times when she doubted herself, but kept moving forward anyway. He knew how much courage it took for her to sit in that church in a wedding dress, knowing that not everyone would be kind. The thought of people mocking her on such an important day stirred something strong in his chest. He shifted his weight and stood a little straighter. Still, he did not move yet. He believed in choosing the right moment. He wanted to understand exactly what was being said, not because he enjoyed hearing it, but because he wanted to be sure before stepping in. His ears caught more laughter. He saw one of the group slap another on the shoulder as they joked. The careless way they acted made it clear they did not think about the real person behind their words. The man's hands rested calmly at his sides, but inside, he felt a quiet fire. He was not angry in a loud, explosive way. It was a steady, focused feeling. The kind that told him it was his responsibility to protect what mattered. He did not believe in making scenes. He believed in making things right. A car drove by slowly, and for a moment the noise covered the voices of the group. The man took a deep breath. He thought about the promises he had made to himself and to her. He had promised that she would never face cruelty alone if he could help it. He had promised to stand beside her, not just in good times, but in moments when people showed their worst sides. This was one of those moments. He looked down briefly, then back up. The group was still there, still laughing, still unaware. They glanced his way once or twice, but quickly dismissed him. To them, he was just another quiet man standing by a truck. They did not know his connection to the bride. They did not know his story. They did not know how deeply he cared. Inside the church, the bride felt restless, without knowing why. She adjusted her hands in her lap and tried to focus on the music. Her heart told her that something outside was not right. She trusted that things would work out, but she also trusted that someone was watching over her. She did not know where he was at that exact moment, but she believed he was near. That thought gave her comfort. Back outside, the man noticed a guest walk past the group and shake his head in disapproval. That small reaction confirmed what he already knew. This was not harmless joking. This was cruelty, even if wrapped in laughter. He decided then that he had waited long enough. But still, he did not rush. He took one slow step away from the truck, then stopped. He wanted to be calm, clear, and in control when he spoke. He remembered times in his own life when people had judged him without knowing his full story. He knew how unfair that felt. That memory added to his resolve. He was not just standing up for the bride, he was standing up for respect, for decency, for the idea that no one should be reduced to a joke because of something they did not choose. The wind moved slightly, brushing the edge of his coat. He lifted his head and fixed his eyes on the group. They were still laughing, still unaware that the quiet man had made his decision. To them, the day was just a chance to be careless. To him, the day was something sacred. It was about love, courage, and a woman who had already fought harder battles than any of them could imagine. He took another step forward, slow and steady. His boots made a soft sound on the ground. One of the bullies glanced up again, noticing him a little more this time. The bully felt a small, strange feeling, like someone was watching more closely than before. But he quickly shrugged it off and turned back to his friends. They laughed again. What they did not realize was that this was the last moment of easy laughter. The quiet man was not coming to shout. He was not coming to threaten. He was coming with truth, with presence, and with the kind of strength that does not need to raise its voice to be felt. As he stood there, just a little closer than before, the space between silence and action grew smaller. The air felt heavier, even if the group did not yet understand why. The calm before change often feels like this, quiet on the surface, powerful underneath. And while the bride waited inside, unaware of every detail but trusting in the goodness around her, the man across the street prepared to step out of the background. He had been silent for a reason, but silence, when it has done its job, gives way to action. The moment was coming, and when it did, the laughter near the fence would not sound the same again. The quiet man finally stepped fully away from his truck and began walking toward the group near the fence. His pace was slow and steady, not rushed and not hesitant. Each step felt calm but also full of purpose. The bullies noticed him more clearly now. One of them stopped laughing mid-sentence. Another tilted his head, trying to figure out who this man was and why he was coming closer. When the man reached a few steps away, he stopped. He did not stand too close, but he stood close enough to be heard clearly. The laughter faded into an awkward silence. The group suddenly felt less confident. Something about the man's presence made them uncomfortable. It was not fear exactly, but it was respect mixed with uncertainty. He did not look angry. He looked serious. That made a bigger impact than shouting ever could. In a calm voice, he spoke. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He told them that he had heard what they were saying. He said that a wedding day was not a place for mockery. He reminded them that the woman they were laughing at was a real person with real feelings, not a joke or a story to pass time. His tone was firm but controlled. He did not insult them. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke the truth. One of the group tried to laugh it off and said they were only joking. The man looked directly at him and said that jokes were meant to make people smile, not to make them feel small. His eyes did not leave the man's face. The bully's smile slowly faded. The others shifted their weight, suddenly unsure of themselves. The quiet man then shared something they did not expect. He told them that he knew the bride very well. He spoke about her strength, not in a dramatic way, but in a steady, honest way. He explained how she had faced life-changing challenges and still chose to build a future. He spoke about how she never asked for pity, only for respect. As he talked, a few nearby guests slowed their steps and listened. The small group was no longer just a private circle. Others were beginning to hear. One of the bullies tried to change the subject, but the man continued, still calm. He said that it was easy to laugh when you had never faced real hardship. He said that true character showed when you treated others with dignity, even when they were different from you. His words were not cruel, but they were clear. Each sentence felt like a mirror being held up to the group. The mood around them shifted. The laughter was gone. The confidence was gone. In its place was an uncomfortable silence. One of the bullies looked down at the ground. Another crossed his arms, no longer smiling. They had not expected this quiet man to step in. They had not expected anyone to challenge them in such a direct, calm way. More guests had now stopped nearby. They did not crowd around, but they were close enough to understand what was happening. A few nodded slightly as they listened. The man's words reflected what many of them felt, but had not said. The bullies could feel the eyes on them. For the first time, they realized they were not in control of the situation anymore. Then the man said something that changed everything. He calmly told them who he was in relation to the bride. He did not need to explain in great detail. He simply made it clear that she was not alone, that she was deeply loved, that someone strong and steady stood beside her, not out of pity, but out of respect and love. The group's faces changed. What they thought was just a distant situation suddenly became very real. One of them muttered an apology, not very loud, but loud enough to be heard. Another looked embarrassed. They began to understand that their words had consequences, not in a dramatic or threatening way, but in a human way. They had been careless with someone's dignity, and now they were being asked to face that truth. Inside the church, a few guests noticed that the atmosphere outside had changed. The music continued, but the feeling in the room slowly became lighter. Some people who had felt uneasy before now felt a sense of relief, even without knowing every detail. It was as if a heavy cloud had started to lift. The quiet man did not stay long after that. He had said what needed to be said. He did not wait for praise or attention. He simply looked at the group one last time and said that he hoped they would think more carefully about how they treated others. Then he turned and walked away, just as calmly as he had arrived. The bullies stood there in silence. The fence that once felt like a place of careless fun now felt uncomfortable. They did not laugh anymore. One by one, they stepped away, no longer interested in staying. Some looked ashamed. Others looked thoughtful. None of them looked proud. A nearby older man shook his head quietly and then smiled a little, as if grateful that someone had finally spoken up. A woman clasped her hands together, feeling relieved. The moment had passed, but its impact remained. Back inside, the bride felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She did not know exactly what had happened, but her heart felt lighter. It was as if something unseen had protected her. She smiled softly, trusting that things were being handled, even if she did not see it herself. Outside, the quiet man paused near his truck again. He took a slow breath and looked toward the church doors. His face softened. He had not done what he did to look strong. He had done it because it was right. He adjusted his hat and waited, ready to take his place when the time came. The laughter that once filled the space near the fence was gone. In its place was a quiet understanding that words matter, that dignity matters, and that even the most silent person can carry great strength. The day was moving forward now, not just as a wedding day, but as a reminder that respect can change the tone of any moment. And while many inside the church did not yet know what had just happened, the effect was already there. The air felt cleaner. The mood felt calmer. The path was being cleared for something better, something built on courage, truth, and the simple power of standing up for what is right. After the quiet moment outside, the feeling around the church slowly changed. The tension that had been hanging in the air seemed to fade, even for those who did not know exactly why. Inside, the guests settled into their seats with calmer hearts. Soft music continued to play, and the gentle sound filled the space with warmth. The bride noticed the change too. Her shoulders relaxed, and a small, peaceful smile stayed on her face. It felt as if something heavy had been lifted from the day. Then, at last, the church doors opened again. This time the sound was different. It was not just another guest arriving. The room grew quiet in a special way. People turned their heads toward the entrance. The groom had arrived. He stepped inside with a calm, steady walk. His eyes searched the room until they found the bride at the front. When he saw her, his face softened and a quiet smile appeared. In that moment, nothing else seemed to matter. As he walked down the aisle, a few people noticed the confidence in his steps. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. It was clear that he knew exactly where he was going and why. He was there for her. The bride felt her heart beat a little faster, but this time it was not from worry. It was from love and relief. The man she trusted was here. When he reached her side, he gently greeted her and took his place next to her. His presence brought a deep sense of comfort. The two of them shared a look that needed no words. It was a look built on shared struggles, shared hopes, and a quiet promise to face life together. The guests could feel that connection. The room felt warmer because of it. The ceremony began. The pastor spoke about love, patience, and respect. His words seemed to carry more meaning because of everything that had already happened that day. He spoke about how true love is not just about easy times, but about standing together when life is difficult. Many guests nodded quietly. Some felt their eyes grow a little moist. The message felt real, not just like something read from a page. The bride listened carefully, her hands resting calmly in her lap. She thought about her journey and how far she had come. Sitting there, dressed as a bride, she felt proud, not in a loud way, but in a deep, personal way. She had survived hard days. She had rebuilt her life piece by piece. And now she was starting a new chapter with someone who truly saw her strength. The groom, standing beside her, felt the same sense of meaning. He remembered the first conversations they had, the way she had smiled even when life felt heavy. He had admired her courage long before he had fallen in love with her. To him, she was not defined by what she could or could not do physically. She was defined by her heart, her kindness, and her determination. Outside, the space near the fence was now quiet. The people who had once laughed were gone. The area felt different, calmer. A few guests who had seen what happened earlier felt grateful that the situation had been handled with dignity. There was no drama, no loud scene, just a clear message that respect mattered. That quiet change helped protect the peaceful feeling of the wedding. Back inside, the vows were shared. The bride and groom spoke simple, honest promises. They promised to support each other, to be patient, and to face challenges together. Their voices were steady, every word felt sincere. The room was so quiet that even small sounds seemed loud. People leaned in slightly, not wanting to miss a single moment. When it was time to exchange rings, there was a gentle pause. The groom carefully placed the ring on the bride's finger. She looked down at it for a moment, then back up at him, her eyes shining. Then she placed the ring on his finger. It was a small action, but it carried a lifetime of meaning. It was a promise, a symbol of two lives choosing to walk together no matter what. The pastor smiled and spoke the final words of the ceremony. When he announced that they were now married, the church filled with soft applause. Some people smiled widely, others wiped their eyes. The bride and groom looked at each other, both feeling the same deep joy. They had done it. They had reached this moment together. As they turned to face the guests, the bride noticed many kind faces looking back at her. She saw pride, happiness, and respect. Any earlier negativity felt far away now. What remained was love and support. She felt surrounded by something stronger than cruel words. She felt surrounded by community and care. The groom gently placed a hand near hers, a quiet sign that he was there and always would be. That simple gesture meant more than any big speech. It said, "You are not alone." And for the bride, that meant everything. Later, as people began to move and prepare for celebration, the quiet man in the cowboy hat finally stepped fully inside. He did not make a grand entrance. He simply took a seat, watching with calm pride. His eyes rested on the couple, and a small smile touched his face. He had done what he needed to do. Now, he could simply be present for the joy of the moment. The bride eventually noticed him and met his eyes across the room. For a brief second, they shared a look of understanding. No words were needed. She could feel that he had protected her in ways she might never fully see. That knowledge made her heart even stronger. The day moved forward with laughter, gentle conversations, and quiet happiness. Food was shared. Stories were told. The mood stayed light and warm. The wedding became not just a ceremony, but a celebration of strength, love, and second chances. For many guests, this day became something they would always remember, not because of anything fancy, but because of what it represented. It showed that courage does not always look loud. Sometimes it looks like showing up, sitting tall, and believing in a better future. The bride in her wheelchair was not seen as weak. She was seen as strong, loved, and respected. The groom, standing beside her, was not seen as someone making a sacrifice. He was seen as someone choosing love, with open eyes and a full heart. And the silent cowboy, who had stood in the background for so long, was a reminder that true strength often speaks softly. He did not need attention or praise. His actions spoke for him. By the end of the day, the church, the town, and everyone who witnessed the wedding carried a quiet lesson with them. Kindness matters, respect matters, and love, when protected and honored, can rise above even the hardest moments. The bride and groom left the church not just as a married couple, but as a symbol of hope. Their story was not about limits. It was about courage, support, and the power of standing together. And for anyone who saw them that day, it was a reminder that the strongest people are often the ones who have faced the hardest roads and still choose to believe in love.